Okay. Hello, my name is Morgan Fiedler, and today we'll be discussing social identity theory for my summer social psychology course. I chose this concept to investigate because as a college student myself, I am especially interested in further understanding and developing my own personality and my own identity. It's an interesting concept that we are who we are is directly correlated to who we surround ourselves with. To begin, social identity theory was created by Henry Tajfel and John Turner. This theory basically states that social identity is a person's sense of who they are based on their group membership or their membership to multiple groups. These groups provide individuals with sources of pride and increases their self-esteem. There, of course, are many positives as well as negatives to this theory. Humans naturally group things together. This in turn creates the negative us versus them mentality. When this happens, the divide tends to continue to increase between the two groups or multiple groups. And then within your own group, people tend to focus on the things that they have in common. Unfortunately, this is a slippery slope. This us versus them mentality can lead to prejudice, and then this can potentially lead to racism, depending on the situation. This is the case because pointing out flaws and differences constantly can lead to dehumanization in the long run. Back to the theory itself, there are 3 mental stages. The first stage is social categorization. As mentioned before, we tend to put people into categories based on social environments and the context which they find themselves in. In doing so, the specific boxes we've assigned an individual tell us more information about that person. On a personal level, we learn more about ourselves in that same way. In addition, we learn about the norms for our behavior based on the box that we put ourselves in. The next stage is social identification. This stage is where the individual begins to adopt the behaviors, identity, and belonging to that group. This can increase self-esteem and feeling of belonging as an individual starts to blend in. So they'll change their behavior based on the group that they see themselves in, to the way that they think they should be acting, the way that they see that group. The final stage is social comparison. This is when an individual begins to compare the group to other groups, typically in a negative way. This, as I mentioned previously, creates an us versus them mentality which tends to spiral. They see their own group as amazing and all other groups as different and often below them. The next thing about social identity theory that I want to discuss in social identity theory is social behavior is a continuum. The 2 ends are interpersonal behavior and intergroup behavior. The reason why we don't typically see one extreme or the other is because the majority of social situations end up in a compromised combination of the 2 ends. This can be thought of as a similar way to groupthink. The more people in a social situation, the more compromise, especially if everyone present and involved is a member of the same group. Finally, I wanted to talk a little bit about what happens to an individual who has been ostracized. The whole social identity theory is based on how an individual benefits from a group setting. So without belonging to a set group or by being shunned by one can lead to decreased self-esteem. This exclusion and rejection, which is another way to say being ostracized, can also have an extremely negative effect on an individual's mental health, which can in turn affect their physical health. And this can also cause further withdrawal from the other groups that they may be a part of. If they feel like they're not good enough for one group, then it starts to hit their self-esteem for others. This happens because the groups that they were members of or wanted to be members of are still highly held in their mind, so they still see them as these great things and they think they're not good enough to get into them, and that's how it hits their self-esteem. This ostracism can also be internalized, and the individual begins to believe those same things about themselves, or they start to pick themselves apart and attempt to figure out why that group did not accept them and push them away. So, in conclusion, social identity theory kind of basically explains how groups create how people feel about themselves and can increase their self-esteem and their sense of belonging. Yeah, that is all. Thank you.